Okay, I've been asked to do something on managed or dirty floats in terms of exchange rates. The UK at the moment is, broadly speaking, pretty much what's called a clean float system. And what that means is that the exchange rate simply responds to supply and demand. So, as a reminder, if you look at what determines an exchange rate, then essentially the exchange rate is the price of one currency in terms of another. So, if that's say the pound against the dollar, say that's £1 equals $2, and that's £1 equals $1. Then what do we mean by the supply and demand in this context? So the supply is the supply of pounds. It's not the UK money supply. It's those people who want to sell pounds to get dollars, and you're going to get your best deal. When £1 equals $2, you're getting more dollars for your pounds. So who might want to do that? It might be people who want to go on holiday to America. They're more likely to go if £1 equals $2 than if £1 equals $1. So they'll sell more pounds. So spending money abroad is imports. Or you might want to buy property or shares or put money into American banks or something. Or set up a business in America, and that's capital outflows. And this is all dealt with in a different revision video. Likewise, who demands sterling? Demand for sterling comes from those people who want to sell dollars to buy it. So why might I want to sell dollars to buy pounds? I might want to come to the UK. When am I going to want to come to the UK? Most likely, or buy UK goods and services, come to Dover Brooks. I'm most likely to want to do that when £1 equals $1. It's cheaper. So if, say, Dover Brooks fees are £20,000 a year, if £1 equals $2, you'd pay $40,000. If £1 equals $1, you'd pay $20,000. Same for Dover Brooks, but better for you. So, and likewise for assets. So, demand is equal to exports plus capital inflows. At a high exchange rate, demand is relatively low. At a low exchange rate, demand is relatively high. So, in a clean float, various things can happen. So, for example, UK interest rates might go up, in which case more people will want to save money in UK banks. D will shift to the right. But at the same time, fewer people will want to sell sterling. They're more likely to want to hold it in UK banks, so supply falls to the left as well. So that's what's called a free float. The exchange rate simply moves around in response to changing market conditions. So what's a dirty or a managed float? A dirty or a managed float is where the government or the central bank of a country deliberately holds a currency above or below its free market level. So China was often accused of doing this throughout the 90s and noughties. They were accused of holding their exchange rate at an artificially low level. So what they were doing back then is the equilibrium. Yes, if we invert this, so it's kind of it's yuan to US cents. Probably they were holding it at I think 1 yuan is equal to about 6 US cents. When the free market equilibrium was more like about 1 yuan equals 11 US cents. So why were they doing that? That's fairly obvious, which is it makes Chinese goods and services much cheaper on world markets in China and so on. So how do they do it? Because if the equilibrium is here, that's the exchange rate at which supply and demand are equal. So the problem would be if the exchange rate is down at 1 yuan equals 6 cents, then it's not going to stay there. There's excess demand. There's demand for, say, it doesn't really matter, 200 trillion yuan. There's supply onto the market of only 50 trillion yuan. Therefore, there's excess demand of 150 trillion yuan. So how is the Chinese central bank going to prevent the exchange rate from moving up to equilibrium? It's not God. It can't stop things from moving, not in and of itself. So what it's going to have to do is it's going to have to meet the excess demand for yuan. So that's an excess demand of 150 trillion yuan. Now the Chinese central bank is in a fairly simple position in that it can electronically create yuan. So all it does is it adds 150 trillion yuan to the market. So you can see this as either meeting that gap there, or if you prefer, you could see it as shifting supply to the right. So what it does is to hold the currency bill, to keep it, to hold below equilibrium. Then what you're going to do is you sell your own currency, which increases its supply. So in this case, the Chinese central bank sells yuan and it buys dollars. So buys foreign currency. And this is why the Chinese central bank and the Chinese government have huge reserves of yuan. So they did that for many, many years, and that helped Chinese companies to become established, on world markets, because their goods and services look very competitive. Sometimes central banks might want to stop their exchange rate from falling, and there've been a number of cases like this, and I'll come to in a minute. So in terms of keeping it overvalued, there's a couple of reasons. One might be that you want to allow certain key importers to be able to access cheap foreign currency. So again, in China's case, suppose they kept the yuan up at the higher rate, then anybody now wanting to buy things from the States, like imported technology or whatever, would be able to do so relatively cheaply. You might want to prevent a sudden decrease in the exchange rate, because this can be very disruptive to your economy, because the price of imports suddenly rises very, very quickly, and it could be quite inflationary. So again, if we look at how we're gonna show that, then what we're going to say is that let's suppose at the moment, in fact, China is attempting to to prevent the yuan from depreciating. So again, I haven't checked the current rate. Let's suppose that that yuan, 1 yuan is currently, say, 10 cents. And we use the same numbers as before. It's attempting to depreciate. The equilibrium level now, we'll suppose, is 1 yuan equals 6 cents. So demand is exports plus capital inflows, supply is imports plus capital outflows, as usual. So the situation now is that at the current rate, more people are trying to sell yuan than wish to buy yuan. So somehow the central bank is going to have to prevent the yuan from falling. But this is a more difficult job, because suddenly what we've now got to do is this is an excess. This is too many yuan are on the market. So to take those off, the central bank is going to have to buy them. But obviously it can't buy them with yuan because that isn't going to work. It's going to have to use dollars. So what it's going to have to do is it's going to have to sell dollars to buy yuan, which is fine if you've got dollars to sell. Now, in the case of China, the Chinese government has some absurd reserve of dollars that it can use, but obviously this can't last indefinitely. Eventually, you're going to run out of foreign currency, and you can't then print dollars. The Americans get quite upset. But again, so if you preferred, you could say, essentially the Chinese government bank is demanding its own currency, so you could see it as a shift to the right in demand. But essentially what you're doing is you're bridging the gap between supply and demand. So essentially then, that's a dirty or a managed float, is where the government, rather than accepting the free market level, decides for whatever reasons to try and hold the currency either above or below the free market level.